So the tone of the book. I think the cover makes quite clear that this is not a gentle book. We ended up having quite the conversation stretching over months about the subtitle. The title came rather easily, and we knew we were going with Jesus and John Wayne early on. The subtitle, however, was difficult. It was made especially difficult by the fact that my publisher ended up dictating that I was not allowed to use the words masculinity or militarism anywhere in the subtitle or the title of the book. And this was simply because they were big words, and this is a trade book. It's meant for popular audiences, and they wanted a book that people would pick off the shelf. For me, this was a problem because I'd always considered this my book on white evangelical masculinity and militarism. And so to have to come up with a description of the book not using those two keywords was a challenge. And so my editor and I and my agent and the sales team went back and forth on so many iterations. In the end, we were running out of time, and we really just kind of sat down and thought, what is this book ultimately about? What is at stake here? What is at stake for evangelicals? What is at stake for Americans? And that's where we came up with this subtitle, How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. And I want to quick say that the corrupted of faith is actually not a historical claim. I'm kind of stepping out of my role as a historian there. And much of this book is just pure history, right? But it's framed in a critical light in the introduction and the conclusion. And that subtitle really points to that critical framing. And that is my attempt to speak directly to evangelicals, directly to American Christians, right? Who claim to uphold the historic biblical Christian faith, who claim to uphold the authority of the scriptures. And that really reflects what I write about in the book, about how traditional theological teachings, conceptions of the Trinity, basic teachings of the New Testament, like love your neighbor as yourselves, love your enemy, turn the other cheek, all of the fruits of the Spirit, really, how these are dismissed or distorted or absolutely rejected, blatantly rejected by many of the proponents of this militant Christian masculinity, of this militant evangelicalism. So that corrupted of faith is really my speaking directly to evangelicals who claim to uphold the scriptures. I will say that I realize that it can come across as rather harsh. I've been surprised to hear from many evangelicals themselves who really appreciate that, who appreciate the blunt honesty, but also who, as Bible-believing Christians, are grateful that I'm suggesting that there is a Christian faith that is not this, that there is a Christian faith, a biblical Christianity that does not look like this militant faith, that there are many evangelicals themselves who believe that what I write about is in fact a corruption of their faith. And so I'm happy that that's how at least many evangelicals are receiving the title, the subtitle. The tone of the book throughout, though, I decided to not show deference to those in power. And that was really important to me. So it's not just the subtitle, it's the chapter titles, it's the tone, it's the sarcasm, a little bit of snark here and there throughout the book. It kind of came naturally, I have to say, working with this material, spending years immersed in this literature. And to be honest, getting increasingly angry when I saw the fruits of this ideology, angry when I had to write that last chapter. That was an incredibly difficult chapter for me to write. It was difficult to research. I hated editing it. Every time I kind of turned the page in my manuscript and had to confront that chapter again, I had to steel myself. because I was just so angry with what I had uncovered, with what I needed to say. And so there is some anger that runs through this book as well. But in my study of white evangelicalism, in my study of abuses of power, of sexual abuse within these communities, I saw repeatedly examples of quote unquote good, respectable Christians, right, in these churches, in these families, in these organizations who repeatedly showed deference to men in power, repeatedly showed deference to abusers of power, would still call them brother in Christ, would still, would still prop up their authority and end up blaming the victim. So often it was victims and their families who were excluded from these communities, who were left bewildered to pick up the pieces on their own. And I kept seeing these patterns of those with power continued to wield power, and members of their communities continued to prop up their power through deference. And so I decided early on in this process that I did not want to participate in that. I did not want to participate in that culture of deference, which I had seen so many times end up perpetuating the abuses of that power. And so the tone of the book is actually very intentional. It did come naturally as I was writing, again, after I had really just immersed myself in this world and come to understand how that world worked. And so I think that if anything, perhaps I'd like to encourage readers too, who find themselves in these cultures, who have maybe been trained that showing proper deference is a way of showing respect to authorities, to maybe being obedient to God, or just being nice. That would be very critical of who we're showing deference, who we're giving deference to, who we ought to be showing deference to, and what occasions may require something different from us, may require courage, may require rocking the boat, may require going against those who hold power.